Hi everyone, it's Miss Costa here, and in this video I'm going to be showing you how to factorise things into single brackets. Okay, so before we launch into the algebra, let's just have a go at factorising with numbers. Okay, so when I'm factorising, it means I'm trying to write my expression in its simplest form, trying to take out the highest common factor and I put it in brackets. The highest common factor is what is being multiplied by everything inside the bracket. So the highest common factor of 10, the largest number that multiplies into both 10 and 15, the largest times tables that 10 and 15 appear in, is 5. Now, if I know that 5 is the highest common factor, I'm going to write each term in relation to its highest common factor. So 5 and 5. How can I write 10 in relation to 5? Well, 5 times 2 gives me 10. What about 15? 5 times 3 gives me 15. Okay, now 10 and 15 are being added. So I write my addition, I keep that the same. I want to keep the expression the same. And now I identified my highest common factor. And if I were you, I just think using colours is great. Use a different colour so that you can see what you're doing. 5, I take it and I put it outside the bracket because that is what is common to both terms. Okay, so this is one term, 5 times 2. This is another. And 5 is being multiplied by each of the 2 and the 3. So I could simplify that by putting it into brackets, because instead of writing 5 times 2 plus 5 times 3, I could write 5 brackets 2 plus 3. So when I'm putting something into brackets, I'm saying that everything on the inside of the bracket is being multiplied by the 5. And as you can see here, 5 times 2, that would give me 10. 5 times 3, that would give me 15. 10 plus 15 is 25. So if I just did this calculation, obviously I know this is an easy calculation, we could do it. I'm using this to show you how we can apply it to numbers. So 10 plus 15 is 25. Now what do I do if I do it using my factorised form? What makes it a little bit easier, especially when we get really big numbers, like obviously 10 plus 15 is fine. But when it comes to really big numbers or a complicated algebra, it's a lot easier to just work out what's in the bracket first and multiply it by the number on the outside. So 2 plus 3, what does that give me? 5, okay? And when I'm factorising, in general, in algebra, when a number and a letter are next to each other or something is inside a bracket, the term on the outside is being multiplied by everything on the inside. Using BIDMAS, I'd work out the brackets first. So 2 plus 3 is 5. So then what does this mean? 5 times 5, which is 25. It's just another way of writing this expression. I know this seems a bit silly because I can just do 10 plus 15. But it's so that you can see how writing 10 as 5 times 2 and writing 15 as 5 times 3 then allows me to take out the highest common factor and put it into a bracket. Now, if this is confusing you and you're like, I don't like dealing with it in numbers, ignore this and just focus on the algebraic ones, which are coming up next. But this is just to give you an example of what we're doing when we're factorising. We're literally squeezing out the highest common factor and putting it into a bracket. Okay, so let's start with our first example of factorising 8x plus 16. Now I want to find the highest common factor of both terms. So the largest thing that fits into 8x and 16 is 8. So that's my highest common factor. And remember, when I'm factorising, I'm trying to squeeze that out of both terms and put that outside the bracket. So 8 is my highest common factor. I'm just going to write it in a different colour so you can see. Now, think to yourself, if 8 is the highest common factor, how can I write each term in relation to 8? Well, first one should be quite easy, because what does 8x mean? Remember, when a number and a letter are next to each other in algebra, that just means that they're being multiplied. There's this like invisible multiplication sign being implied by them. 8x is how we write 8 times x. So 8x means 8 times by x. And how could I write 16 in relation to 8? Well, 16 is 8 times by 2, okay? And obviously they've given us, these two terms are being added. So I'm going to write the plus sign in between. So I found my highest common factor, which is 8. So I pull that out and I take it and I put it outside of the bracket. Okay. Factorising means take the highest common factor, squeeze it out and put it outside the bracket. So what am I left with for my first term? I'm left with x, and here I'm left with 2. So I've taken 8 out, and being in a bracket means it's being implied that this is being multiplied. So it means 8 times by x plus 8 times by 2. And that's it. I factorised my first one. 8x plus 16 would factorise into 8 brackets x plus 2. Now, using expanding brackets, which is the inverse operation of factorising, you can double check if it's right. So let's have a go. 8 multiplied by x gives me 8x, and 8 multiplied by 2 gives me 16. So then you know you've done it right. Okay, so for our next example, it's not going to be quite as simple as the first one, because our highest common factor isn't going to be one of the numbers. So 4x take 10. What is the highest number, the largest number that multiplies into both 4 and 10? And obviously it needs to be an integer when we're factorising and dealing with algebra. We generally just deal with whole numbers. So the largest times tables that fit into 4 and 10, that would be 2. So 2 is the highest common factor. So I'm going to write each of these terms in relation to 2. So how could I get 2 to become 4x? What does 4x mean? It just means 4 times by x. So I know I need to be multiplying it by 2. So 2 times by 2 gives me 4. And then obviously times by x. So 2 times 2x is equivalent to 4x. I've got a subtraction sign. I'm subtracting the terms, so I'm going to write my subtraction here. And then I've got 10. How can I write 10 in relation to 2? Or 2 times 5 gives me 10. Okay, so the highest common factor of both of these terms is 2. I put that outside of the bracket. And then whatever is left over, I put into the bracket. So over here, you've got 2x left over. You've got your subtraction sign, and here you've got 5. So 4x take 10 factorised would give you 2 brackets 2x take 5. Now, if I do my double check, and I would always encourage you to double check. So 2 times by 2x gives you 4x, and 2 times by negative 5 is negative 10. So 4x take 10. Is that what I started out with? Yes. So you know you've done it right. Okay, so this expression has 2 variables. It's got x and y, so it's a little bit trickier. But if we do exactly what we've been doing so far, it should be pretty clear what we need to do and what we need to take out. So I look for the highest common factor first. So the highest common factor between 6 and 12, because obviously x and y, they're not common. So 6 and 12, the largest times tables that fits into them is 6. So 6 is the highest common factor. And I'm going to try and write both of these terms in relation to 6. So 6 times by x gives me 6x, because remember, invisible little multiplication sign. And then 6 times by what gives me 12 times by 2. And then obviously it's being multiplied by y as well. 12 times y is the same as 6 times 2 times y, because 6 times 2 gives me 12. Okay, I write an addition in between because I'm adding these 2 terms. So I've got my highest common factor. I write that outside the bracket. And then what am I left with? Over here, I'm left with x. And over here, I'm left with 2 times y, which simplifies to 2y. Once again, the terms are being added, so I write an addition in between it. Double check it. 6 times x, 6x, 6 times 2y is 12y. Is that the same as what I've started out with? Yes, so I know I've got it right. Okay, so I've got 2 variables again, and my highest common factor isn't one of these terms, it's something less than that. So let's think of the highest number that fits into 8 and 28. That would be 4. So I write each term in relation to 4. Okay, so 4 times what gives me 8? Well, 4 times 2, and obviously 8x, that means 8 times by x. I could write it as 8 times by x if I wanted to. If you need an extra step, that's absolutely fine. Take that extra step, and then you know that 8 is 4 times 2. What about 28? 28, how can I make that? I'll write it like that. So 4 times by 7 gives me 28, and then you've got times by y. Okay, so I'm just writing this in its different form. And if this is a little bit confusing, then familiarise yourself with expressions, because that's where you're tripping up, not in the factorising. It's understanding expressions and how algebra works. So I've got this, I've got my highest common factor, which is 4. I take that out and put it outside the brackets, and then I'm left with 2x over here. 2 times x simplifies to 2x, and 7y. And they are being subtracted. So I write 4 brackets 2x take 7y. How can I double check it? By expanding the bracket. So 4 times by 2x is 8x, and 4 times by 7y is negative 28y.
So here are those same examples, but just written out slightly differently. You can screenshot this if you like, print it out, or write out some of those examples, but this is just for your reference. And now here are some practice questions, so have a go at them and pause the video, and the answers are coming up next. And here are the answers for each of the questions. If you did get anything wrong or you don't understand why something is what it is, then just drop a comment and I'll let you know where you might have gone wrong. But hopefully we're feeling good so far.
Okay, so this time I'm dealing with x squared. Okay, so I'm dealing with x to the power of something. And hopefully, if you familiarise yourself with the expressions beforehand, you know that x squared just means x multiplied by itself. Okay, so let's write these out as what the algebra is actually telling me. So x squared, that means x is being multiplied by itself. 5x, that means 5 times by x. Okay, so what is the highest common factor now? We're not dealing with numbers, we're dealing with the algebra. So the largest thing that is being multiplied into both of these expressions. Well, both of these expressions are being multiplied by x. Okay, so x is now the highest common factor of both of these terms. That's why if I write them out like this, I can just circle the highest common factor and put it outside. So I take my bracket and x is going outside of them. What's left over here, I'm left with x for my first term. I forgot to put the plus sign. And then I'm left with 5 over here. Okay, so when I've got an expression like this, x squared plus 5x, that would factorise to make x brackets x plus 5. Double check it, x plus x is x squared, x plus 5 is 5x. Okay? Okay, getting a little bit trickier again. So we've got 2x squared to take away 8x. So let's try and just write out what's happening. Okay, because now we're not just dealing with numbers and easily spottable common factors. We're dealing with algebra and the highest common factor of the algebraic terms as well. So 2x squared, what does that mean? Well, it means 2 times by x times by x. 2 times by x squared, and x squared means x times x. Now I've done something sneaky and I actually identified the highest common factor first. We should have identified that first. So the highest common factor of the numbers, the highest common factor of 2 and 8 is 2. And that's why I'm writing it in relation to 2. So let's write out how I could write 8x in relation to 2. Well, that would be, let's just put that here, 2 times by 4 times by x, because 8 is written as 2 times 4. Okay, so that part there, 2 times 4, is being multiplied by x. Now, the highest common factor, what is the same, what is common to both of these terms? Well, 2, I've already circled, is the highest numerical common factor. So take 2 outside the brackets. What else is common? Well, both of these expressions are being multiplied by x. Okay, so I take out x as well. So I've got 2x, because 2 times x simplified to 2x. 2x goes outside of the brackets. And then what's left over for the first term? X. These terms are being subtracted, so I write as subtract. And what's left over here? We've got 4. Okay, so this expression here would factorise to 2x brackets x take 4. Double check it as always. 2x times by x gives you 2x squared, and 2x times by negative 4 is negative 8x. Okay, so over here you might notice that it says factorise fully, which is slightly different to what it said before. And the reason I say factorise fully is because sometimes we only look for the factors of the numbers. So in this case, let's say the highest common factor of 4 and 14 is 2. So I could be like, okay, that's the highest common factor. 2 times 2x squared and 2 times negative 7x. That's factorised. And yeah, technically I'm right, it is factorised, but it's not factorised fully. Because to factorise something fully, we need to take out the highest common factor of each term, which includes the algebraic part and the numerical part. So 4x squared, I haven't extracted the x. So this, unfortunately, is not factorised fully. It is factorised, so it's partly there. It's factorised, it's put into brackets, and you've taken out a factor. But you always want to factorise fully. So let's start by finding the highest common factor of the numbers, which is 2. So I want to write each expression in relation to 2. So 2 times by what gives me 4, times by 2. And then I'm left with x squared, which is x times by x. I need to write a bit smaller. And how about 14? Well, I'm writing it in relation to 2. So 2 times by 7 gives me 14, and times by x. So remember, this part is the numbers. 14 is the same as 2 times 7, 4 is the same as 2 times 2, and this part is the algebra that's left over. So x squared is x times x. Okay, so the highest common factor, I've got 2, that is common, and I've also got an x that is common. So what does 2 times by x mean? Oh, and also something I haven't mentioned, but the operation, so the multiplication, the subtraction, whatever, it belongs to the term after it. So this multiplication it belongs to the x. The x is being multiplied, so that's why I've circled that too. So 2 times x, that gives me 2x. So that goes outside of my brackets. And then what's left over? Well, over here I've got 2x, 2 times x. So that would be written like this. And over here I've just got 7. And the terms are being subtracted, so I put a subtraction sign there. Double check. 2x times 2x gives me 4x squared. 2x times 7, negative 14x. If you're finding this bit tricky, then you want to be revising expressions and multiplying expressions, okay? Because this is expanding brackets. This is just double checking. You don't need to do this part. This just tells you whether you've done it right or not. Okay, and that's that for this section.
So once again, here are the same examples, just written slightly differently. Screenshot if you like, and if not, the questions are coming up now. So here are some questions for you to practice. Just pause the video here and do whichever ones you like. Hopefully you do all of them, but if you feel like you're confident, then obviously just do a few. And here are the answers.
Okay, so we've moved on to kind of almost, the hardest it's going to get really in terms of factorising single brackets and before we introduce complex indices. So 2x squared plus 6xy, look for the highest common factor. The highest common factor of 2 and 6 is 2. So let's write them in relation to that. So 2 times by x squared. What does x squared mean? It means 2 times x times x. 6xy. What does that remain? Remember, you can put this like little cheat invisible multiplication sign in here if you like, just to help you remember when numbers and letters are next to each other like this, They're called terms, and you can imagine there's this like little invisible algebraic multiplication glue sticking them together. So we've got 2 times x, and then here we've got 6 times x times y. Oops, except I'm writing it in terms of the highest common factor, which is 2. So 2 times 3 times x times y. Okay, so all I've done is I've written 6 in terms of the highest common factor between 6 and 2. So you're always trying to break it down using the highest common factor. So what's common to both? 2 appears in both breakdowns of the terms, as does x. Okay, so I'm circling the common factors. So 2 times x appears in both of these, therefore 2x goes outside of the brackets. And inside, what is left over? You've got x left over plus 3 times y, which becomes 3y. Expand it, 2x squared plus 6xy. So you know you've done it right. Okay, so once again, we've got 2 variables in both terms now. So highest common factor of the number part, we've got 6 and 12. Highest common factor is 6. So we'd write that as 6 times by x squared. What does that mean? It means x times by x, and that's being multiplied by y. Separated by, remember we're writing it in terms of the highest common factor, so 12 is 6 times 2 multiplied by x multiplied by y. Okay, so let's squeeze out the highest common factor, which is numerically 6, and they also have 1x in common and a y in common. Okay, so the highest common factor is therefore 6 times by x times by y, which hopefully you feel comfortable with writing as 6xy. Remember that in algebra we don't write the multiplication, it is implied by the numbers being next to each other. So 6xy is the factor that goes on the outside. And then what do we have left over? Over here we've got x left over, and over here we've got 2. And it's a subtraction, the terms are being subtracted, which is why I write my subtraction sign there. Expand it back out, that gives you 6x squared y, take away 12xy. And nearly done. Okay, so perhaps this looks a little bit scary, but hopefully if we just apply what we've learned and we break it down, it becomes a little bit less intimidating. So start with the numbers. What's the highest common factor of 8 and 6? The largest times tables that multiplies and fits into 8 and 6 would be 2. So I'm going to write both of these terms in relation to 2. So 8 is 2 times 4. X squared, what does that mean? It means x times x, and it's being multiplied by y. And then how can I write 6 in relation to 2? 2 times 3 times by x times by, what does y squared mean? Remember, when something is being squared, it just means multiplied by itself. So I've got this really long thing here. Now, what is in common between both of them? Well, you've got 2 here. You've got an x in common, and you've got a y in common. Okay, so in this case you've got 2xy, 2 times x times y, outside the bracket, and what's left over? 4 times x. 4 times x is 4x. What's left over here? 3 times y, which is 3y. And I put an add because the terms are being added. And that's it for factorising single brackets. Next time we're going to be doing factorising quadratics, which is when we put it into 2 brackets. But for now, just have a go at these questions and let me know how you get on.
And that's it for this lesson. So if you have any questions or you want me to cover something else, just drop a comment below and I'll make sure to get back to you.